Hey there, I'm Jeremy. I'm a product manager here at GitLab. I'm here today to talk to you a little bit about our analytics story here in GitLab and where we're investing in 2020. I'd love your feedback on kind of whether or not this vision makes sense to you, but I wanted to share kind of how we're thinking about it thus far. So I guess I wanted to start with thinking about some of the challenges that we've been hearing for users in relationship to analytics and insights within the product. And really, I think the first one, it really starts with business value. Um, Everything that we ship is in motivation of some business reasoning, and we want to be able to better understand that. Like what KPIs are we kind of driving? What specific objectives are we kind of like solving and problems that we're kind of like addressing with the things that we're shipping? We want to understand that in the product better. And I think the second thing is really about shifting left when it comes to DevSecOps best practices. We see organizations that either aren't familiar and they're undergoing digital transformation, or where there are pockets of teams that are doing this really well. But in general, we want to be able to shift security, we want to shift testing, and we want to shift quality kind of left over time. And I think the third thing is all about productivity. And we want to be able to see and find bottlenecks in our SDLC. We want to be able to ship faster over time. And so these are the kind of the three areas that we really think about. And I think the good thing is that in GitLab, we already have like a pretty nice framework for the DevOps lifecycle that kind of starts with plan and moves to create. And we have verify and then release. And we also have configuration of your application environment. And finally, monitor. Make sure you can see that full thing. Okay, perfect. So, we already have this really nice framework that we already use to thinking about in the DevOps lifecycle. And for the purposes of this, I'm kind of leaving out the stages that kind of span multiple stages, like manage, secure, and defend. And so this is kind of how we think about it and how teams kind of ship software, whether or not you're using GitLab or not. And within this, we see kind of like different levels of fidelity in this, where we have kind of the organization, the org level, we have the org level, we have like the team level, and then we have like individual repos where this process is all taking place. And we want to be able to understand the story kind of at each particular level. So here's kind of where we're going, is we want to be able to create this story around this full like value stream directly in the product. Like cycle analytics has been a analytics feature that we've had in the product for a while. We haven't explicitly connected it to this DevOps lifecycle. And we're going to change that by specifically calling cycle analytics value stream analytics. And by creating that framework directly in the product, we can start doing things like explicitly calling out things like lead time, which is going to be, starting from, plan all the way through release, and then actual like cycle time, which is when the work actually starts to the work actually being delivered. So here. By explicitly creating this framework in the product, we can start doing more interesting things like that. And we also want to start drilling down to analytics features that are specific to each stage. We want to like start right now with something like create, for example, where create, if we zoom into create a little bit, we have create, and create really starts with, with a company or a project, starting development, and then we have the actual like code review begins, review process, and then we actually have it finally, development is complete, and it actually gets merged and eventually gets deployed to production. So we want to start drilling down into each of these areas. So we're starting right now going bottoms up by starting with breaking down each one of these different areas into specific analytics features that help you understand and drill down into each part of the value stream. So here, for instance, we're starting with code review. So code review is an analytics feature that we're releasing in 12.7 that is going to allow you to better understand when review starts, and then when development finishes, and which particular merge requests are actually lagging behind in that process to help you find bottlenecks. We'll likely circle back, eventually to productivity, which is, the start of development, to actually like the beginning of review to help you understand developer productivity a bit better. So that's kind of how we're thinking about prioritizing and breaking down like the value stream by explicitly adding into the product, and by refactoring cycle analytics to explicitly call out this value stream, and then introducing bottoms up new features to be able to help you understand and drill down into each individual part of your cycle to understand where the bottlenecks are and where you can leverage best practices to increase your cycle time and your overall velocity. But this is bottoms up so far. So far, this really doesn't do much for us, for an organization who is still struggling with the first question, which is all around business value and like, how do I understand kind of what the business value is that we're delivering via software delivery. I think it's great for, if you want to shift left and be able to understand how we can, leverage security best practices and quality and introduce better testing and increase the velocity of what we're delivering, but it hasn't showcased, business value yet. And I think that this is where we have DevOps Score kind of come into play, where previously we had a feature called ConvDev Index, which is originally kind of a concept for solving this, which attempted to kind of span across all of the features that said, well, here's kind of how you're doing in relationship to other instances, and what you can be doing a little bit better, possibly. I think that's an interesting idea. And I think that we need to invest in that a little bit more by going top down as well, by showing some of these instance level features in a way that's useful for organizations. So you get ultimately like value stream management or value stream delivery really is the delivery of value through a software development process. And I think we need to answer the question of what do we mean by value? And I think that there's a really great Forrester report by Chris Kondo that was published recently called Sync Developers with Business Needs. And in that, there's a really great kind of pyramid, kind of reminds me of like Maslow's hierarchy of needs when it comes to software. And at the bottom, it's just kind of basic KPIs when it comes to what we mean by kind of, business needs and business value that we're delivering. And these are basic KPIs, kind of like medium time to resolve, availability, kind of like your basic DORA metrics. But you go up a level and then you have things like retention, and revenue. And then at the very top you have LTV, which is the customer lifetime value that we're actually like motivating and delivering by the things that we deliver. And we want to work our way up this pyramid, I think that what the plan that I think about and see is starting with some basic KPIs at the instance level by refactoring ConvDev Index / DevOps Score, by showcasing what kind of issues, merge requests, and basic DORA metrics like deploy frequency, just to showcase kind of the basics of the value that you're getting out of kind of GitLab. But I think the real value that we can kind of eventually deliver is being able to show business value like retention, like revenue, like LTV directly in the product, and enable you to show what kind of value that you're delivering over time with your software development process, end to end, from plan all the way through create, verify, release, configure, and monitor. And in that monitoring phase, you should be able to understand like the value that you're delivering, where you're lagging behind, and what merge requests or what efforts were the most valuable to your customers. And I think that we're still trying to figure out the vision for how we accomplish that. Maybe we can do this with telemetry that lets you like directly capture traces and metrics in GitLab and monitor them with like our Prometheus integration. I'm not exactly sure yet. We're still trying to understand that vision a bit more, but I think that's the vision that we need to work towards. I think that we'll get there together, but that's kind of the near term and where we're going, which is we're going to create a story for value stream for cycle analytics that we'll now call value stream analytics. We're going to drill down into each individual stage with specific analytics features at the project, group, and instance level. And then we're also going to go top down by refactoring DevOps Score into something that showcases kind of what's happening at an organizational and instance level, starting with kind of the basic KPIs around Dora, around just instance activity, objects that are being created, and eventually working our way up the value chain so that we can showcase things like ultimately business value, which is what it's all about. So those are all my thoughts. Please, I'd love to hear kind of like your reaction to that, whether or not that makes sense to you. But overall, that's kind of how we're thinking about analytics, and we'd love to have your help in making it happen. So thanks a lot. Cheers.